Hello everyone, welcome back to Debating for America's Youth. Today we have another awesome guest interview. Today I'm interviewing Arabella Crites, who is an amazing congressional debater. She won the states in congressional debate, and she's been to nationals twice in congressional debate in the Senate, correct?
Yes.
Yes, so today I'm going to be interviewing her. So welcome, Arabella.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. So my first question is, how did you get started in speech and debate? How did you hear about speech and debate, and what made you want to join the activity?
Well, my school has a speech and debate team, and so we have a class for it, which makes it really easy to kind of get into it and join it. And I always knew that I loved debate, so even though I didn't know much about speech and debate as a whole whenever I started it, I definitely knew that I wanted to join speech and debate, and then I just ended up loving it and I kept doing it.
That's awesome. And so in Congress, a key part of it is you're in a room with other congressional debaters, and I find it hard to kind of stand out to the judge. How do you find it best to stand out to a judge with all, like a room full of amazing competitors like at states?
I think that the best way is to definitely know what you're doing, and so know parliamentary procedure, be able to motion for different things, especially when you're starting off the session, and then making sure that you get one of the first speeches in and not being afraid to go out there and try something a little bit different, or try like a different opening or introduction that is unique from what other people are doing, and making sure to just be nice to the judge. Obviously, like shaking their hand after the round is also really helpful.
Definitely, I agree with you. And at the senior open tournament I competed at, they started out and it was the first bill and no one had a speech and everyone just like standing there waiting. So I jumped in there with a speech. But it was kind of, if you jump out there and show that you are ready to give later round speeches, early round speeches, it can show that you're more versatile in the room.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. And when it comes to prepping, especially for bigger tournaments like nationals, where the docket is huge, or for bigger tournaments, how do you like prep with so many bills that you have to prepare for?
I usually focus on getting 3 points for each side of a bill, and then I find evidence for each of those 3 points, and I don't write out full speeches. Usually I just get the evidence that I want to for sure put in there, and then if there's something really important that I think of that I like need to make sure to get into in the round, then I'll make a little bullet point note of it. But other than that, I don't really write out my speeches for anything. I just have my evidence prepped and ready and the tagline of my point, and then I make up the speech on the fly a little bit.
That makes sense. In terms of introductions, do you prepare introductions beforehand, or do you like come up with them based on the speech you've written, or do you have like a list of introductions? How does your introductions work?
Well, I have some pretty generic introductions that I use for different things, but then sometimes I come up with an introduction beforehand that I'm like, wow, this really works, and then I'll write that one out. But sometimes I'll just have it written on the top of my paper in round, or sometimes it's more of like a refutation of what someone else has been saying in the round that relates to something that I'm saying, and so then I go off of that. So honestly, it just kind of depends on whatever comes to me.
So you're saying you have prep on each side, like 3 points on each side of the bill. How do you end up like preparing? Like what's your research process look like?
Well, honestly, sometimes I have no idea what the bill is talking about beforehand, and so I start off on the Wikipedia page for those things, and I just kind of get a basic idea and an understanding of what I'm actually researching and I'm about to debate about. And then I honestly find that those pro-con sites are really helpful, but I don't usually use like a ton of the points like just copy pasted from there. What I'll do is go to the very bottom, and it's kind of like Wikipedia, has a bunch of sources for it, and so then you can put them in your search engine and find the full article, and then I find those really helpful for researching.
Definitely. Yeah, I would agree with you. And especially when they cite those really good sources, if you don't cite procon.org or don't cite Wikipedia, then it's a strong evidence point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of questioning, how do you come up with questions? Do you kind of like look at a bill and then from there like come up with questions based on what you're reading? Or do you listen to a speech and then base your questions off of like the speech that was just given?
I'll typically listen to a speech and base my questions off the speech that was just given, because some judges, I think we had one in our district especially this year who really liked questions and took them into account, and a good judge will take questions into account, and so it's important that you have like specific and direct questions to be asking the person, and so I think it's almost necessary to hear their speeches first a lot of the time. But sometimes I will just ask a generic question if I haven't asked one in a while, because questions are also like a good way to make yourself more known to the judge and be like, hey, I'm still here and I'm still competing, even if you hadn't gotten a speech in a while.
Definitely, I totally agree. And I think that one thing when we were debating against each other was we had like one round in particular that was my favorite Congress round ever, because we just went back and forth with each other and had so much clash and questions, and that was a lot of fun. So like you talked about, you have 3 points on each side. How do you like I guess weave refutation and like clash into your speeches?
Yeah, so if there's something that kind of relates, like directly clashes to one of my points, then I'll throw it in there and say, well, Senator Fair said this, but my evidence refutes this, and then I'll read off my evidence and say, like, don't listen to what Senator Fair is saying, or something like that. But then if it's something that I could construct like my own logical argument to at the end of the speech, then I'll put it at the end, and so I'll read off my 3 points and be like, and now to respond to what some of the other senators on the opposing side have said in this round.
Definitely. And when a lot of times I've experienced in speech and debate how like someone's points can be like, I guess, contrary to another person's like data. How do you kind of like weigh data for the judges? Like how do you show the judges that your data is more impactful or more meaningful than your opponent's data?
Right, I think that can be definitely tough at sometimes, because it's not like a public forum round where you're gonna spend prep time showing each other your cards and making sure it's a reputable source. And so I think that honestly it's gonna come down to confidence and who confidently explains their evidence the best. And then I think it also, logic has something to do with it, and you can say, well, this evidence is better because of this, prefer my evidence for this reason. And so I think being able to back up why your evidence stands or why this study is better than the opposing side studies is really important. So being able to kind of know why your evidence says what it says.
Definitely. And you talked about in the beginning of this interview how you prefer, like, to jump in there with an early round speech is important. Do you prefer to give speeches earlier in the round, or do you prefer to, like, I guess, differ in the round, like, between, like, later round speeches and earlier round speeches?
Honestly, I don't have much of a preference. I don't like giving too many sponsorship speeches or just like the first speech on a bill, because I think that it's important to refute other sides and show that you can do that and think on the fly like that. And so I don't particularly care in round when I'm giving speeches a ton. I kind of just give them whenever I can. But I do like to get a speech on early, or in the round, like as early as I can, kind of, so that then later in the round I have more opportunities to be giving more speeches.
And in tournaments, for those who don't know Arabella, she does a bunch of different events. Do you feel like doing like OO and informative speaking and extemporaneous as well as Congress helps your speaking style? So when you're in the Congress round, you can kind of have an edge on the competitors who don't like perform their speaking like more?
I think that doing those other events has definitely shown me that there are a lot of different styles of speaking, and it's helped me to get better at making eye contact, because that's super important. And so whenever I'm doing like original oratory or informative and I'm speaking and I don't have my speech right in front of me, then it helps me to kind of make eye contact and shows me how powerful that can be, and so then I remember that for my Congress rounds. But I also think that it's helpful kind of just in tournament to kind of go without stopping. So like when I'm entered in 4 events in a day, then I think it like keeps my energy levels up, and I never have to worry about like re-warming up or anything, making sure that I'm like my diction is good and everything. I'm just kind of there already, just going from round to round. And so I think that it's almost helpful to just go really quickly from different events and then go straight into Congress and have just come off speaking in another round before that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in North Carolina, the way that they do speech and debate is they have it where it's like 2 3-hour Congress rounds with like a lunch break in the middle, and so you literally don't get a break from doing Congress. So when I moved out here and I started doing speech and debate, it's a lot different in terms of like there's like the flights, so you get a break from doing Congress. And so I feel like going continuously in North Carolina helped me when I got here. So then when people were starting to like, I guess, lose stamina, I was used to going for longer. So similar thing with what you were saying, doing other speech events would help you because you actually have the stamina to keep going when other people are getting tired because you've prepared for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and at bigger tournaments like nationals, it's more structured for the bigger long rounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of going to nationals, I'm sure you could have qualified in any event you wanted to. Why did you choose to go in Congress debate?
Well, this year I picked Congress over like OO or informative because Well, first of all, I really love Congress. It's kind of, I actually hated it freshman year, but it's...
Why is that?
Well, I started it in Wyoming, and they're definitely the more aggressive side of debaters, and so doing it at Cheyenne East as like a little freshman, I had my speech handwritten on like a piece of notebook paper, and I got absolutely destroyed. And so I was like, I'm not doing this again. It's so much more fun to do OO, and we're all nice to each other. But then I started getting better at thinking on the fly and like logically formatting arguments, and so then it became a lot more fun the more confident that I got at it. And so I think that I picked it because I guess I was less sick of it because I started it later, so you do kind of get tired of doing these events. But then also, I really do love debating, and it helped that I went last year in it, and so I kind of had that understanding of like, 'cause nationals is a whole different ballgame, and so I kind of already had the understanding of how nationals worked in Congress this year. And so I think all of those things kind of contributed to my decision. It was a lot of little things.
That is interesting. I will say that my first year in speech and debate and doing Congress, I remember the first round, I didn't say a word because there's so many intimidating people, and I felt like, I didn't know so many smart people were in speech and debate. I don't know what I was thinking, and so I didn't say a word the entire time, which is pretty boring. And then the second time, yeah, I got completely destroyed like you were saying. What do you think, like, I guess, what advice would you have for a novice who, like you, would go into a Congress round and be completely intimidated? Like, do you have any advice for, like, that person to become a better debater and a congressional debater?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, just let yourself get destroyed, because there's no way to achieve success like failing. And so I think that it's really important to have those learning moments. Like my coach always says, if you're not winning, you're learning. And so it's not necessarily that you're failing, it's that you're learning how to do it better. And so every time that you're actively engaging in the debate, you're first of all becoming a better speaker just by practicing a lot and giving those speeches, and you're becoming better at answering questions and developing confidence, which is like, confidence is a huge key factor in Congress, as I'm sure you could attest to. And so I think just practicing and letting people who are better than you show you why they're better than you is really important. And so just taking from the people who are better than you and learning from them is super important.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I remember debating in Congress, as I was saying, in like the earlier years. I remember I debated against this, her name was Senator Volonke, right? And she was like so much better than me. And I just like thought that like that's how most Congress competitors were. But later I realized that she, like, I think placed fifth in the nation in that nationals. So I realized that she was like, you know, like really, really good at what she did. But I remember picking up like certain things from her, like my speaking style, like the way I give speeches, I like almost like, not, I guess, mimicked from the way she gave speeches. Is there anything specifically you remembered, like a style that you use now that you remembered seeing someone else better than you did and that you decided to pick up?
I think that, well, Colorado does Congress very differently than Nationals does Congress. So when I got there junior year, I was like so glad that I didn't give that first speech. Like, someone else got it over me, and I was thanking everyone for that because I would have completely just gotten annihilated from it. And so I think like the lightning bolt of success thing was something that I wasn't used to, that I was picking up from people at Nationals, and like having your speeches on that legal pad. So it's just a lot of stuff that you kind of have to conform to those standards a little bit to be really great at Nationals, but then to be exceptional at Nationals, I think you have to put your own little spin on it. And so just like finding your unique style is helpful, but I mean, of course you have to mimic a little bit like what everyone else is doing, and what just like finding the best person you're around. I remember in my first chamber, I was against people who were like 13th in the nation for Congress and stuff like that, like you said with your example. And so just like I could definitely tell that they were the ones who were going to go to finals, and so like watching them and mimicking their styles, so that definitely turned my Congress style around for this year.
And you've competed in public forum at local tournaments, correct?
Yes.
What's like debate styles that you picked up in Congress do you think you applied to like public forum, and which styles of Congress do you think are not compatible in other forms of debate?
I think that the styles that I picked up from Congress that helped me in public forum is kind of finding evidence and working with that, because I remember freshman year I wasn't super great at finding reputable sources that were actually going to be helpful, or things that made that had causation as opposed to like correlation. That is an argument that I got taken down on time after time. And so I think that Congress kind of helped me to develop my researching skills and evidence finding, especially because you have to find so much evidence for so many different things. And so it kind of just like fast-tracked my evidence finding for public forum. But I think what's unique about Congress that's not compatible with other debates would be honestly the questioning periods. You have a lot of leeway in Congress with the fact that if there's 8 people asking you a question, if you don't give the perfect answer to someone or like intentionally kind of dodge their question, then they're probably not going to have enough time to stand up and ask you a follow-up.
True.
And so that's something I definitely use to my advantage in Congress that I can't use in other debates, and sometimes it kind of gets me tripped up when I go back and forth between them because I'm like, I'll get to a public forum round and be like, oh, now I have to answer follow-up questions about why I just dodged that first one. But that's what I love about the questioning periods in Congress is that, first of all, as a questioner, you have to be direct with what you're saying and like make sure that it's apparent to the judge that you're not like the exact answer that you want, and if you're not getting it, then that they're dodging your question. But then also finding ways to dodge certain questions but still sound like you're giving the answer to that question is something that's unique to Congress that I really like about it.
True. Yeah, I agree with you. If you can just like kind of talk your way through a questioning period, it's over, and then you can sit down.
Yeah.
And so I remember there's so many times that like I don't know, I like was not prepared or like I guess at the level of everyone else in the room. So I just kind of like yes, no, yes, and then they're like, wait, are you saying this? No, and then I would just be able to sit down and be like, whew. But yeah, I completely agree. But I think that's a good time because in Congress, unlike others, like people call Congress not like a speech event, right? Or because of the way you don't really have as much like, I guess like, I don't know, you don't really build on like your points very much, right? Like unlike what you do in other events. But what I think is important is like what you were saying, call out correlation and causation, talk about links between their speech and the actual bill, right? Like a lot of times people will debate about like the topic and not the bill, right? Like say like if it's about like the death penalty, they debate about the death penalty, but not about like what's in the actual bill.
Exactly.
So I think that like it's able to make it more of a debate event because you're able to call out things that you see that are wrong in another person's like speech. So I think that you're able to kind of, I guess like have, you know, like more of a debate in that format.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think is one thing that speech and debate has helped you in like, I guess, regular life or like in other areas besides for speech and debate?
Well, there are a lot of them for sure. I think that, first of all, just being able to have conversations with people that express my opinions without becoming this huge heated argument that like ruins a relationship. And so I think that's been really helpful in interactions that I've had with other people that don't even really have to do with politics, just like kind of anything that you disagree on. It's been really helpful with that. And then of course whenever it comes to your classes, like it's helped me write research papers because it's really easy for me to find research topics and find evidence for them. And then oftentimes I also already have a speech for what we're researching from Congress, and so that's been helpful to have. But then also just what I found is doing interviews for jobs and scholarships just this past year, that all of the speech and debate kids that I've seen go through the process have definitely had a leg up on the competition because it's just, ooh. Well, just because it's kind of effortless for us to like walk in and be able to be completely unprepared for something, but to be confident and able to have a conversation and speak in an interview setting. And so for job opportunities and scholarships, it's definitely been beneficial for that as well.
Completely agree. I mean, I'm not proud to admit it, but I've had some school projects where I've not been 100% like ready for it, but because of speech and debate, I knew that I could go in and like get a good grade on the assignment because I could just talk my way through almost anything at this point, I would say, and especially in a room full of non-speech and debate kids, being a speech and debate kid, you can definitely have that leg up.
Yeah, for sure.
So we were talking about like speaking nerves before, and you talked about confidence. Like so you said you started off speech and debate and you were kind of nervous. Was there any like specific things you did for your like speaking nerves that got you better at like being able to speak in front of people in Congress and other events?
I think that honestly, like letting your nerves be there a little bit is kind of important, like letting myself think that like this round is important, this speech is important, what I'm doing here is important, and kind of having like that butterfly feeling in your stomach. I think that it promotes a good performance. Like, athletes in track will say that whenever they're nervous, it's a good thing, and so it makes them run faster and perform better and be more focused. And so I think that letting those nerves happen a little bit is helpful. Like, whenever I get up in front of a audience in a congressional debate round, I'm standing there and I'm like absolutely shaking, partially because I've had too much coffee, but also because I'm pretty nervous still giving it. But then, like, knowing that I'm nervous helps me to do those things that I know make me look more confident. And so, like, sitting up straighter, having my shoulders relaxed, that was a big thing for me, not like scrunching up my shoulders. I used to do that. Like, I literally used to talk like this. It was awful, but like relaxing my shoulders, seeming relaxed, but like being able to make eye contact with people, but not being affected by their expressions, because people will definitely make some faces that throw you off a little bit. And so just like kind of almost ignoring what you're looking at, but still making that eye contact to make you look confident is really helpful. And I love my high heels. That's something for girls. I think high heels are super confidence boosting, or at least they are for me. Like, they make me look taller, and I really, like, secretly really like whenever they clack on the floor on the way around. Like, I think it helps me, like, present myself better. Just, like, hearing that, I'm like, okay, like, I'm getting ready to go into round now, like, Congress face on, we're ready to go. And so I think getting into that mindset also helps me. So, like, my thing is heels, so whatever your thing is, like, I know that's not much of a thing for guys, but just finding that thing that makes you confident and gets you in that confident mindset.
I completely agree. For me, I think it's my red power tie and my lapel pin, because I go from just being Nathan, who's nervous, not ready for the round, to a more of a congressman, right? Because I'm like, I've heard it put this way, like you're no longer, like, you're taking on the role of someone else. I'm not sure if I like that analogy myself. I more like think of it as like I am like, I'm ready. Like, I have the stuff and I'm ready to go. Like the heel, like you are kind of like transitioning into you're ready and you're more confident because you have the things that you feel confident in.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And so the final question, this has been a great interview, is now that you've gone through speech and debate, and done it, do you have a message for the speech and debate community? And I will say that some people took this question to being like things that they want to see the speech and debate community improve in, and some people took that as more of a time to thank the community for all that's helped them with. So, like, if this is your opportunity for everyone watching the interview, just kind of talk to them.
Well, I think that speech and debate has been an incredibly important part of my life, and obviously I would recommend it to anyone who is like on the edge deciding whether or not they should do speech and debate. But one of my favorite parts of speech and debate has been the conversations that I've had outside of round, and that's kind of what makes the day doable. And so, first of all, I mean, I would like to thank anyone who has had a conversation with me outside of round and engaged in that, whether it's been something crazy like squid centrism, where we debate whether all squids should take over the world and we should just do what's in their best interest, and like just silly things like that, or if it's been something really serious and we're all talking about religion and why we believe what we believe. And so, I mean, I'm so thankful for all of the people in this community who have engaged me in those conversations and made me not just better at debating somewhat not arbitrary things necessarily,